So how can we as parents and grandparents reach our children who have been blocked by our children who have not let us connect with them? Our precious grandchildren who we would love to communicate, but we may be forbidden. My husband was in a race car accident and fully recovered, yet our son and daughter agree Dr. Google is more insightful about traumatic brain injury than our brilliant team at Mayo Clinic. So this seems like a more specific and difficult question.
Questions there. Let's focus on the first question. How do you engage with your grandkids when your kids do not want you to engage? At least until the grandkids turn 18, their parents will have fair bit of control in who they engage with. I'll tell you a story. This is a true story about someone I met. She shared that good person. She and her husband, very rational person, very enlightened person. And she said, here's the problem. When my father-in-law comes, he drives my kids without seatbelt on. And because he grew at a time when there was really no focus on seatbelt. So I've told him like 8 times, but there's only so much I can tell him. So I have no choice but to bar him and from seeing. He has very different attitude about hygiene. He doesn't like to wash his hands after he goes to the bathroom. And I just can't stand it. It disgusts me, but I can't tell him about it. So sometimes there is these unsaid, unspoken, differences that are creating miscommunications, and because with change in generations, change in resources, change in our level of dependence on across the generations. Because 200 years ago, we really depended on being a joint family, each other's help, but now everybody is independent and has the resources to take care of themselves. So I think it helps to ask before blaming them, what can I do different so that I am perceived as safe and loving in the company of grandchildren? Is there something I can do differently? So that is the first step, instead of blaming. Because if you think you're blaming your children or grandchildren, you will reach nowhere. It's not going to work. You will just keep, butting your head against the wall. It's not going to work. So the first step is, what can I do differently? And in that context, maybe sometimes you can ask a direct question if you have that communication that, is there something I'm doing which is not right, which you would rather have me do? And you may be blind to it because we are blind to blind spots. We're blind to our blind spots. We don't even know what we're doing wrong unless we are told sometimes, because that's a norm for us. Like 2 fish swimming in a water, small little fish, and the big fish comes around and says, oh, the water is so warm today. And the little fish look at the big fish and say, oh, what water? Because they're in the water, so they don't know they are in the water. The second part is trust and love missing between you and your children? If trust and love is missing between you and your children, then it is going to be very difficult, because they are probably conveying that energy to your grandkids. And then it's going to be difficult for you to go past that shell that they have created. You can start off with the right kind of gifts. You create you share something that you and the grandkids can engage with together. But I would say the first step is to improve your relationship with your children in order for you to have a connection with your grandchildren. And I think the other part is we are really biologically, we feel like we should really spend as much time with our grandkids, but love other grandkids as your grandkids to compensate for that. I don't know if you have any other ideas. I've struggled with every time I've talked to a few patients who have struggled with it. They've tried a few things, but if you sneak past or do something else, it can lead to even worse relationship situations, I feel. I would love, whoever asked this question, I would love to sit with you in person and try to understand the dynamics of the situation, because I don't know the details of the situation. How is your relationship with your children? What are their perceptions? What are their beliefs? Are they was there stuff that happened between you and them as they were younger? Is there a reason they don't trust and love you? Can that be fixed? Can you have an open conversation, or is there no conversation happening? What are the, I'm assuming grandkids would love to connect with you. What have they shared with the grandkids and such? So it's complex. It's a very complex situation, which needs a lot of specific details to address. But I sort of try to share the generalities.
Yeah, the follow-up statements in this question really appear to deal with a very specific situation. I've been doing a lot of reflection on this question in the last couple of days since I was organizing this in his spots, and I know that I've shared with you, and several on these calls may have heard that my mother-in-law is dealing with a glioblastoma, and we as a family have been kind of struggling around choices of care, and that seems to relate somewhat to the second part. And my mother-in-law has a very different opinion of medicine than I do, and really what I finally landed on is, and I went back a lot through my notes from the SMART program, from other things, how do I address this? Because it's infuriating, because why wouldn't we do the right thing, my right thing? And I landed on acceptance, because it happened to be a Wednesday. And the idea of empowered interaction with what is, right? So trying to use what is, and realizing that once I heard her, and instead of trying to change that, interact how we can, and enter the situation saying these are her choices, and I'm not going to agree with them, but I'm going to interact with what is. I'm going to accept the landscape. And we have had 3 or 4 visits in a row of the most beautiful times as a family. We're not addressing that issue because her choices have been made. But we are seeing each other then in that new accepting landscape, and it's been beautiful. I can accept being wrong even about those choices. I'm not sure medically I am, but for right now, what we're choosing feels right as a family.
See, we spend all our life trying to prove we are right, while the world is trying to be impressed by how kind we are, not how right we are. So it's okay to be wrong, and it's okay to accept that. I think every relationship is like a big mural. At any moment, what part of the mural are you focusing on? I think that's the key. The way I like to work is I like to assume, barring exceptions, and 99% of the time, I just like to assume that the other person is right. There's something I'm not understanding here. I do, and it really works, because even when they are wrong, you can find what is right within what that wrong is. You don't threaten them, and they are more open to accept your suggestion because you are validating them, right? So, and relationships is where all life happens. I think if you succeed in relationships, you have succeeded in every aspect of life. So it's very important, these things to understand. See, relationship 101 is, I don't like you for who you are. I like you for how I feel about myself in your presence. So in this particular question, if your children do not love themselves in your presence, they are going to be negatively affected by you. And I think the second question, just to briefly address that, there is intergenerational trust and also lack of trust. I think the younger generation doesn't trust the older generation with technology, for example, and partly that's true because the older generation is not that tech savvy. and they feel like we are the older generation has very different ideas about safety, about hygiene, about life's preferences, and so on. And that's where it comes. That's where the differences come. I think it is best for us to focus on different part of the mural, embrace each other's strengths and weaknesses, and recognize that here is one thing you can imagine. If somebody in your family bothers you, let's say if I have a bad kidney stone and I'm in severe pain, will this person be super joyous and give $1,000 to charity because Chris has, kidney stone? Or will this person want you not to have the pain? And if the answer is this person who really criticizes me, but deep down cares about me and will want me not to be in pain, that's all what you need. That's enough to love that person. So change your thresholds, change your perspectives.